Imagine walking into a crowded room, filled with laughter, conversation, and the subtle hum of connection. You scan the space and notice something peculiar. Some people seem to pull attention toward them effortlessly. They don't shout, they don't boast, yet the air bends slightly in their favor. Eyes follow them, words seem to lean toward them, and even silence becomes their ally. Meanwhile, others, perhaps like you've felt before, move quietly in the same room, unseen, unheard, fading into the background as if wrapped in invisibility. Why does that happen? Why do some people seem to radiate an inner light while others struggle to find their own reflection in the world's mirror? The paradox is this: confidence is invisible until it is tested, and personality is silent until it is expressed. We often assume that charisma, self-assurance, and presence are innate, gifts given to the lucky few. But what if they are not gifts at all? What if they are choices cultivated, disciplined, and refined through inner labor? The journey to improving personality and confidence begins not with what you show the world, but with what you whisper to yourself in secret moments. It begins when you realize that your outer life is nothing more than a reflection of your inner architecture. Every word you say, every gesture you make, every silence you allow, it all emerges from the blueprint of your self-concept. Confidence is not about arrogance or loudness. It is about certainty. Certainty of one's worth, certainty of one's capacity to evolve, and certainty that even in imperfection, there is dignity. The first key, therefore, is awareness, to observe yourself without judgment, to understand the small patterns of insecurity that run through your speech, your posture, your hesitation. Before you can transform, you must see. Before you can command the world's respect, you must confront your own reflection with radical honesty. Stand before a mirror, not to admire or criticize, but to witness. Ask yourself, who am I when no one is watching? What do I believe about myself when the applause fades? Most people cannot answer truthfully because they are afraid of what they might uncover. Yet, that fear is precisely the threshold where transformation begins. Building confidence requires dismantling the false structures that years of comparison, doubt, and rejection have erected. You must unlearn the voice that says, "You're not enough." That voice isn't truth, it's memory. It's the residue of past experiences that never belonged to your future self. To grow beyond it, you must replace it with a deeper voice, one that speaks of potential, resilience, and self-respect. The philosopher Michel de Montaigne once wrote, "The greatest thing in the world is to know how to belong to oneself. That is the foundation of all confidence." The moment you belong to yourself, your mind, your values, your imperfections, you become unshakable. And personality? It blossoms naturally once confidence takes root. Because personality isn't performance, it's expression. It is the honest language of your inner life projected outward. The more comfortable you are with who you are, the more magnetic your presence becomes. People are drawn to those who are at peace within themselves, because that peace radiates certainty in a chaotic world. In this first step toward improving your personality and confidence, understand this: the unseen self is not your enemy. It's your raw material. It's the marble from which your character will be sculpted. You don't need to add layers to yourself. You need to uncover what's already there. The goal is not to become someone else, but to return to the truest version of who you were before the world told you who you should be. Let this realization settle. Every powerful personality you admire once stood exactly where you are now, uncertain, insecure, searching. The only difference is that they chose to begin. Confidence does not begin with action. It begins with perception. The way you see yourself shapes the way the world sees you. It is not the mirror that defines your reflection. It's the mind behind the gaze. To rebuild confidence, you must first reconstruct the invisible architecture that governs your thoughts, emotions, and reactions. Our inner world is a complex structure built over years of experiences, some triumphant, others quietly wounding. Every compliment, every criticism, every failure has left a trace in the subconscious. Without realizing it, you may be living inside a house built from someone else's blueprint: parents, teachers, peers, society, voices that whispered who you were allowed to be. The tragedy is not that these voices exist. It's that we mistake them for our own. To rewire your mind for confidence, you must begin the process of mental excavation. Dig beneath the surface of your thoughts and question the foundations. When you say, "I can't do this," whose voice is that? When you feel unworthy of admiration, who taught you to shrink? Confidence begins where conformity ends, when you stop being an echo and begin becoming an origin. One of the most transformative exercises you can do is inner reprogramming through conscious language. The words you use about yourself shape your reality. The brain doesn't distinguish between external and internal language, it reacts to both. Saying, "I'm always nervous around people," becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because the subconscious obeys commands like a loyal servant. But when you begin to affirm with intention, "I am learning to be comfortable in every room I enter," your brain adjusts its wiring to match the new narrative. This is not about empty affirmations or pretending to feel what you don't. It's about building a new internal vocabulary that directs your emotional energy toward growth instead of defeat. Every time you speak to yourself with kindness and authority, you lay another brick in the foundation of self-trust. Confidence is not the absence of fear, it is the ability to move forward despite it. The human brain is hardwired for survival, not success. It magnifies potential threats and minimizes your own capability. This is why stepping outside your comfort zone feels like danger. It activates the same response as physical risk. But here lies the paradox. The very discomfort you fear is the proof of growth in motion. To rewire your mind, you must learn to reinterpret discomfort as a signal of expansion, not danger. Every time you feel nervous before speaking up, remind yourself, this is the feeling of evolution. When you face social anxiety, remind yourself, this is your mind stretching to hold more of who you can become. Over time, what once terrified you becomes natural. That is the essence of transformation, not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. Your mental environment must also be protected from the pollution of comparison. In an age of constant visibility, we measure our worth against curated illusions. But comparison is the thief of confidence because it tells you that your journey must look like someone else's. True confidence blooms only when you honor your uniqueness as your greatest currency. The philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson once wrote, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment." This quote captures the soul of confidence, not imitation, but authenticity. When you realize that you are not meant to compete, but to complete yourself, you release the invisible tension that has held your personality captive. Rewiring the mind also means learning to expect good outcomes. Confidence is not about arrogance or fantasy. It's about creating a mental state that anticipates possibility rather than failure. The confident person does not assume everything will go perfectly. They assume they will adapt, learn, and overcome whatever happens. That belief alone changes everything. By the time you reshape your mental patterns, your self-talk, your interpretations, your expectations, you begin to notice subtle changes. You stand taller. You speak slower, but with more conviction. You stop explaining yourself so much. You realize confidence isn't an emotion. It's a decision, repeated until it becomes identity. And that identity, forged in the quiet fires of inner reconstruction, becomes the soil in which your true personality begins to bloom. When confidence takes root in the mind, personality begins to unfold, not as an act, but as a revelation. Authentic personality is not about adding layers of charm or imitation. It is about peeling away everything false until what remains is unmistakably you. There is a quiet power in authenticity, a magnetism that does not chase attention but attracts it naturally. The most captivating people are not those who seek to impress, but those who radiate the calm certainty of self-acceptance. Consider for a moment the people who have moved you deeply, not celebrities or performers, but those whose presence felt grounding, whose eyes carried honesty, whose words seemed to echo something real. Their magnetism came not from perfection, but from alignment. Their thoughts, words, and actions flowed from the same source. They are not performing life. They are living it. When your inner and outer selves align, your personality becomes luminous. Every gesture carries weight because it is no longer filtered through fear or pretense. Authenticity is felt before it is heard. It lives in body language, tone, and even silence. The human psyche instinctively recognizes truth, and that is why authenticity commands respect without effort. Yet, becoming authentic requires courage. You must confront the masks you wear, the socially approved identities you've built to survive rejection or criticism. We all carry them. The agreeable persona, the charming version, the quiet observer. Masks are not inherently bad. They protect us. But over time, protection becomes imprisonment if we forget what lies underneath. Authenticity demands that you remove those layers and risk being seen, truly seen. And yes, it feels dangerous because authenticity makes you vulnerable. But here's the paradox. What you fear will expose you is exactly what will free you. The cracks in your personality are not flaws. They are openings through which your light escapes. You must also understand that authentic personality is not static. It evolves with growth. Many people mistake consistency for authenticity, clinging to old versions of themselves out of habit or fear of being fake. But you are not betraying your past self by changing. You are honoring your evolution. Personality, at its deepest level, is a dialogue between the self you are and the self you are becoming. To nurture this authenticity, practice emotional transparency. This does not mean oversharing or performing vulnerability, but being honest about your internal state. When you are joyful, express it. When you are uncertain, own it without apology. The world does not need another person pretending to be unbreakable. It needs people brave enough to be real. Authenticity also requires congruence between your values and your actions. The strongest personalities are those who live by an internal compass rather than public opinion. The moment your behavior aligns with your beliefs, you experience an extraordinary peace, a deep resonance that radiates confidence without words. There is a spiritual truth here. When you stop trying to be someone, you become everything you were meant to be. Your laughter feels freer. Your opinions become sharper, not because you need to win arguments, but because you have nothing to prove. You stop performing life and begin participating in it. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "Become who you are." It sounds deceptively simple, yet it contains a lifetime's work. Becoming who you are means dismantling everything that is not you, every borrowed identity, every fear-based habit, every silent compromise. As your authentic personality emerges, people will respond differently. Some will be drawn to you with admiration. Others may feel threatened, for your authenticity reflects the falseness they avoid confronting. Do not shrink for comfort. Authenticity is not meant to please. It is meant to reveal. Over time, your presence begins to speak louder than your words. When you enter a room, people will sense something unexplainable: calm strength, grounded energy, unforced confidence. This is the magnetic power of authenticity. Cannot be mimicked because it does not come from performance, it comes from presence. And as your presence strengthens, so too does your ability to connect deeply. You begin to see that confidence and personality are not separate. They are two sides of the same truth. The more you belong to yourself, the more others are drawn to belong around you. This is the bridge from inner confidence to outer influence. But to sustain it, one must learn the art of emotional mastery, to remain centered when the world provokes chaos. That is the next threshold of transformation. There is a kind of strength that does not roar. It does not demand attention, nor does it crumble under pressure. It is the stillness beneath the storm, the quiet certainty that endures when everything else wavers. This strength is emotional mastery, the invisible spine of confidence and the secret language of powerful personalities. Most people believe confidence is built on external skill, how well you speak, dress, or perform. But real confidence comes from composure, the ability to remain calm when others lose balance, to act with clarity when emotions pull in every direction. Without emotional control, even the most charming personality will fracture under stress. With it, even the softest voice can command respect. Emotional mastery is not suppression. It is not pretending that fear, anger, or sadness don't exist. Suppression creates pressure. Mastery creates space. When you master your emotions, you don't silence them. You listen to them without letting them dictate your behavior. You become both observer and participant in your own inner world. Every emotion carries a message. Fear tells you where you value safety. Anger reveals your boundaries. Sadness speaks of what you loved and lost. Instead of reacting impulsively, emotional mastery means pausing long enough to interpret what these feelings are trying to teach you. That pause is the birthplace of power. In every interaction, emotions are the invisible current beneath the surface. When you are calm, others feel safe. When you are centered, others become grounded. This is why emotionally composed individuals often hold influence far greater than their words suggest. They radiate psychological safety. But composure does not mean apathy. It is fully feeling without being owned by the feeling. Imagine a candle flame in the wind. Without composure, the flame flickers wildly, casting chaotic shadows. With composure, the flame steadies, illuminating everything around it. The world does not need more people burning out in emotional turmoil. It needs more steady flames. Achieving emotional mastery requires awareness without attachment. When a strong emotion rises, frustration, envy, anxiety, pause. Observe it as if it were weather passing through your mind. Name it. This is anger. This is fear. By naming the emotion, you separate identity from experience. You are not your anger. You are the space in which anger exists. This psychological distance gives you the freedom to choose your response. And choice is the essence of confidence. Every reaction you do not give to provocation, every argument you choose not to fuel, every judgment you replace with understanding, each of these moments builds a fortress of inner stability. You begin to recognize that emotional mastery is not about winning against your emotions, but partnering with them. Fear becomes focus. Pain becomes perspective. Frustration becomes fuel. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." His words capture the timeless essence of composure. When you learn that control lies not in the world but in perception, you become unshakable. The storms outside no longer define the weather within. To cultivate this level of control, practice emotional grounding, the act of returning to presence whenever you feel scattered. Breathe deeply. Feel the weight of your body in the chair, your feet against the ground. Anchor yourself in the now. Most anxiety lives in imagined futures. Composure lives in the present. The more grounded you are, the less approval you need. Emotional mastery frees you from overreacting to criticism or rejection. You begin to see others' opinions as reflections of their own state, not as verdicts on your worth. This clarity allows you to move through the world with quiet confidence. You don't need to win every argument. Your peace becomes your power. In a noisy world that confuses noise for strength, composure is revolutionary. It allows your presence to speak louder than your emotions. People gravitate toward those who remain centered when everything else trembles. When you master your emotions, your personality takes on a new dimension. It becomes not just expressive, but anchored. You can be kind without being weak, assertive without being aggressive, open without being exposed. That balance between strength and softness is what makes a personality unforgettable. And when composure becomes second nature, the final stage of transformation awaits. Translating this inner equilibrium into social intelligence. The art of connecting, influencing, and inspiring others without ever losing yourself. There comes a moment in every inner journey when transformation must step out of solitude and meet the world. Confidence that stays locked within the mind remains potential, not power. Personality that never touches others stays beautiful but unseen. The art of connection is where your inner growth begins to ripple outward, where the self you have sculpted in silence finally begins to speak, move, and influence. Human connection is not about popularity or performance. It is about resonance. When your mind, emotions, and values align, your presence carries a frequency that others feel instinctively. You've met people like this. They speak simply, yet their words linger. They listen deeply, and you feel understood. Such people are not performing connection, they embody it. To radiate confidence in the world, you must first learn the rare art of attention. True confidence is not self-obsession. It is self-possession. The confident person does not dominate conversation but anchors it. They are fully present, eyes steady, mind calm, energy engaged. When you truly pay attention to others, they feel valued, and value is the gateway to influence. But attention is not merely a skill, it is an act of generosity. In a culture addicted to self-promotion, giving genuine attention becomes magnetic. Tells others you matter, and paradoxically, when you make others feel seen, your own presence grows stronger. This is the subtle paradox of personality. The more you give your attention outward, the more confident you appear inward. To connect deeply, practice empathetic curiosity. Instead of waiting to speak, seek to understand. Ask questions that open space rather than close it. When you listen not just with your ears but with your whole presence, you enter into a kind of silent dialogue beneath the words, a connection of humanity. Confidence, at its highest form, is not the art of impressing others, but the art of understanding them. Yet, connection also demands boundaries. Without them, your energy disperses. Your self-respect erodes. Remember, confidence without boundaries becomes people-pleasing, and personality without integrity becomes performance. The ability to say no without guilt, to disagree without hostility, to walk away without resentment. These are signs of true emotional maturity. Boundaries protect your authenticity and preserve your presence. When you walk into any social setting, a meeting, a conversation, a crowd, carry with you a silent mantra. I belong here, but I am not defined by here. This mindset keeps you balanced. You can engage without seeking approval, connect without losing identity. Confidence is not about owning every room you enter. It's about feeling at home within yourself wherever you go. Social confidence also thrives on vulnerability, the willingness to show your humanity. You don't need to be flawless to be inspiring. You need to be real. Share your experiences, your struggles, your lessons, not to seek sympathy, but to offer relatability. Vulnerability transforms personality from performance into connection because it dissolves the illusion of separation. When people see their own fears and hopes reflected in you, they feel understood, and that is influence of the highest order. The philosopher Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." When you reach this stage, you realize that confidence and personality are not tools for social success. They are the natural byproducts of self-understanding. You no longer chase validation because your sense of worth flows from within. You speak with depth because your words carry truth. You move with grace because your mind is unburdened by comparison. True charisma emerges not from control, but from surrender, from trusting that who you are is enough. When you release the constant self-monitoring, your natural warmth, humor, and intelligence rise effortlessly to the surface. People will be drawn to you not because you seek attention, but because your energy invites peace. Connection at its core is an act of courage, to reveal yourself, to reach out, to risk rejection, and to remain open anyway. But when you stand on the foundation of inner confidence, emotional mastery, and authenticity, rejection loses its sting. You realize that not every soul will resonate with yours, and that's not failure, it's alignment. As your personality matures, confidence ceases to be a performance. It becomes a presence. You walk through the world grounded yet alive, humble yet unshakable. You become the kind of person whose silence carries weight, whose laughter uplifts, whose presence comforts. And this is where the journey completes its circle. The unseen self from which you began, the one you once doubted, has become the source of your power. You have learned not just how to stand tall, but how to belong to yourself. The world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more whole ones. People who have walked through their shadows, claimed their worth, and now radiate confidence not as noise, but as light. When you reach that point, you no longer seek to be noticed. You simply are. And that, quietly, profoundly, is how true personality changes everything it touches.